Hello everyone, I am Ben Wolshinski, president of the USTA Association here to bring you another match from the 2018 USTA Open Finals. Today we have a very exciting match. We're going to be seeing SultanPepper versus fwwwwwibib. These two players are both in the winner's bracket and will be going against each other to face off from the winner of the previous match, which just completed shortly ago. Let me actually just bring you up to the bracket real quick, and we'll give you an update on what the standings are, where all the players are. So here we go. You can see on the bracket here that the match we had this morning was just No Hat Coder versus Rabbit Boy 84, and No Hat Coder did take that game fairly decisively. I was not streaming that one, but it sounds like No Hat Coder did win both games, so he took a 2-0 victory. And down in the losers bracket, we have quite a few updates. That if you had not seen all of these games, that the first losers bracket game that was Answa versus Jooms. Jooms did take that one, and that was, again, another fairly decisive match. And so Answa was knocked out, so appreciate him playing in the tournament. He did very well this season, made it into the finals here. The other losers bracket match that has occurred is the Archvenison versus Orphane, and Archvenison did take that match also. So Orphane was also knocked out of the tournament, was eliminated. So thank you to Orphane as well for playing. And we can see that Archvenison moved on, and so his next opponent will be Rabbit Boy 84, who lost the match earlier this morning. The other losers bracket match will be Jooms versus whoever loses the match we are currently about to see. So let's jump right back into the match we're here to see now. SultanPepper versus fwwwwwibib. So let's get the game up on the screen here, and then we will let the players know we can go. All right, and best of luck to both players here. This should be quite a good game. Both Sultan and fwwwwwib here are pretty long-time veterans of the community, so I expect this to be a pretty good, pretty close match. But you never know with TAC, things can change rapidly. All right, so we've got adjacent corners happening right away, and a vertical split of the board. So SultanPepper is taking white for this first match. fwwwwwib will be black. All right, and fwwwwwib is continuing with his build of a road here. Now, this is an interesting thing with Sultan, though he took white. fwwwwwib does have a slight opportunity to gain a tempo here because of the way Sultan placed his pieces. Sultan normally would be the first one to get a road across the board, but because he added this little jogs in it, it will be fwwwwwib who can just barely make that road first. So that could potentially allow him to force Sultan to be the first one to capture. Now, Sultan could still attempt to avoid that. Oh, he brings his capstone in already up on d5. Let's get a little bit of a higher view here as the players build up towards the top of the board. No stacks for now. Now, fwwwwwib needs to make a decision what he wants to do, how he wants to continue this, because while he does have this opportunity, and there he goes, he makes the first tack threat. Sultan responds with a capture. Now, fwwwwwib needs to be careful that he only has exposure to these two stones. He doesn't have any stones of his own who can take on a road threat if it's built just one row further over. Or rather, one column, apologies. So he does bring his capstone into play there on e4. A good, strong, somewhat defensive placement. But I think he's hoping that just that simple force of a capture that he caused Sultan might allow him to, just with that tempo, kind of stay in the game here. All right, fwwwwwib brings a flat into d5. And there we go. Sultan has decided he's going to go for more of a horizontal threat. Fwib's done a fairly good job here with his capstone and keeping his own pieces across the top here. He's got a decent defensive position there. Horizontally, he's also doing well. So I feel like this game is fairly equalized at the moment. Sultan does have the opportunity with the way he has has become called a citadel here. 4 stones connected in a square like that. All right, E1, and so then he connects here. So we have a threat being built across here. This capstone can be thrown down to this square, and that would allow him to finish off a threat if he fills in, say, A3. Fwib seems well prepared for that, though. Got lots of exposure over on this left side. Again, it's his lack of coverage with stones in this corner is something that he seems to be concerned about that as well. He brings his capstone down to break up this citadel. So now it's just a single route being built across the board. All right, E4. So Sultan is responding by filling in that square that Fwib vacated with his capstone. Generally keeping his stones fairly close together for this whole game. This lone B3 is the only one that was placed not connected to something else. Player's doing very well on time. Fwib's just about 10.5 minutes. Sultan all the way up to about almost 12 minutes accumulated. All right, E5. So Fwib's keeping defense in mind, but also he's starting to get enough stones going across that he can a little bit start to see a horizontal threat. But he also does have the option of using these to connect to the top. With the capstone from Sultan here, it's going to be difficult to turn this into a road, but we could see things develop very interestingly as the game continues. So Sultan's thinking here. I think it could be worthwhile. I mean, I think he's trying to reserve this. He could be worthwhile to play A3. It is just going to result in a capture from Fwib. So I think Sultan would like to hold that off until he has a way to make other threats. He could make another threat here on D6. There we go. So now he has the threat of capturing sideways with his capstone to complete a road vertically through here. So Fwib will have to respond with a capture of some sort. Ah, interesting. Okay, so he goes with the D5 downward. See what Sultan wants to do here. He could just place, and that would be a threat yet again with a capture across from E4 to the left. And he does still also have the option of the A3 one to make a threat. All right, so he does fill in D5. So now he's making another threat with this capture E4 to the left. And it is the nature of tack that these threats force Fwib to capture rather than place new stones onto the board. So Sultan is taking back a bit of a lead in the number of pieces played onto the board here. So Fwib responds with an E5 down, and now that has resulted in his horizontal threat nearly materializing. Oh, interesting. That's a very nice move from Sultan. He brought his capstone down, which both broke up that potential for the horizontal road and threatened another road at the same time. Fwib responded with D4 downward, so took both the stones. He has several captives underneath this flat stone now, which is something he's going to have to keep an eye on. But with that coming in next to his own capstone, I think that there's no real risk of those getting out of control. So sucking up more pieces from Sultan brings his capstone down again. And using that capstone, once again, to threaten to take back those captives. That would be a fairly strong move if Fwib let it happen. Not sure what he wants to do there. In this process... Okay, so he does decide to use his capstone to defend that stack. As I mentioned, it's fairly safe as long as he's willing to commit that capstone on there. And he is. So for now, those captives beneath the capstone are locked up tight. And it does have one of his own stones down there, a couple of pieces. So he does have the option for a little bit of throwing with the capstone to make some threats. So with all of that movement and those threats, Sultan very much kind of controlled the direction of the game by pushing all of the pieces downward on the board. And so now you can see that his pieces across the bottom here are really starting to come into play. He's very close to creating a threat in this direction in which this C1 stone could capture upwards. Fwib's got a little bit less options. Are there fewer options? All right, so Fwib goes with D4. And Sultan places on A3, so that is his threat made across the board here, as I was referring to. So all he has to do is capture upward. And Fwib, of course, sees it and responds by bringing his capstone down. The capstone, that has 3 of the white pieces at the bottom of there. So he's got a total of 4 white pieces captured beneath there. Just real quick, looking at the pieces played. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 17 left to be played for Sultan, and it looks like 20 for Fwib there. So just a few pieces lead for Sultan in the number played, but most of those are just hiding underneath Fwib's capstone there. Sultan's starting to take a little bit of time here. Very clearly he is wanting to evaluate things tactically. He's looking at some calculation, no doubt, to figure out how to make just the correct threats to maintain control of the game. All right, and he does decide to just go on to D3 here, which it seems like a great, solid move. It's one of the center squares of the board here, of the 4 center squares. Fwib responds with E3, trying to prevent that connection from happening, because that was, I did not mention it, but that was attack threat coming through here. So that did force some kind of move like that. So Sultan does have the option of renewing the threat, and there he does. F3 he decides on. So now F3 can capture there to complete a road. I'm kind of thinking we might see the capstone here brought upward. That seems like one of the most solid ways to counter this. There we are. He did have to leave this stack slightly less defended. But now I think Sultan could capture here. It would not exactly be attack threat, but it would pin Fwib's capstone there, preventing it from helping protect this stack. Okay, interesting. C1 up from Sultan. I'm wondering if that is what he's preparing for to go after this stack. And this is the point at which, again, kind of a little bit of a piece disparity in this bottom section of the board is just slightly favoring Sultan here, because I'm not sure if Fwib wants to commit B2 to capture on there, prevent losing this deck. Okay, he just simply plays D1. This is still... Oh, and Sultan brings in a wall. That, to me, there's no tack threat there. So that's a kind of an offensive wall there. Not like it offends me, but a wall being used for an attack. And C4 from Fwib, trying to get more of his pieces into the middle of the board. Sultan captures onto D1 with that wall. This is a really strong attack against this D2 square. I don't know if he's rushing that slightly. I liked the idea of bringing F3 over to the left here to pin this capstone. Really would just doom this stack of pieces to being retaken. Unless there's some other cleverness Fwib could try to wiggle out of that. So we've kind of ended up in an interesting board situation where Fwib has begun really filling in a lot of his own pieces in the center. And he has just a bit more center control than Sultan, but Sultan has all of the edge connections. He's got every single edge connection coming in here with just a few. Actually, this comes all the way over to here. With just a few of Fwib's stones between all those edge connections. Oh, and Fwib, rather than protecting this stack by bringing his capstone down, decides to play his own wall on C1. I'm not sure what that wall is going to be doing here. It can prevent a connection from being made through this route. So I guess that does allow him to very much, assuming that this D1 wall will capture upward to try to retake all of these white captives. That does allow Fwib to respond with C1 up to prevent that road being completed. Oh, interesting. Sultan bringing another wall in on E5. And that, to me, doesn't have all that much attacking capability. I don't know if it's just precautionary. It does have the opportunity to regain the captive here on E4. Get this guy out. It's a little bit less of a multifaceted move, though. Now it looks like it's Fwib's turn to burn a bit of time thinking about this. He could really use more flats out on the board. But putting them anywhere useful is difficult. Okay, he decides he is going with the flats. C5. Right up here. So now he brought himself all his center stones. He did bring that connection all the way up to the top edge of the board. So he's got multiple directions he can go up, but finally that wall capture D1 up happened, and then he replied, fwib replied immediately, no hesitation, with C1 up. He had that move prepared. Sultan responds, not immediately, but quickly with E5 down. So he is just freeing up, or getting in position at least, to free up a whole bunch of his captives. Now, with this wall on top of D2 here, this capstone of fwib's, that is pinned. He cannot move the capstone and leave behind these white captives underneath it because of the threat of F3 to the left. So for fwib's turn here, he is missing a lot of connection, and with the current arrangement with wall capstone around fwib, basically all blocking pieces, this whole section is just isolating his main collection of pieces from connecting to either the bottom or, you know, any of his other two down here. These two have been very useless for most of the threats made so far in the game. If he can continue to elongate or stretch out the game, they could always come into play. But right now, they're being isolated is to Sultan's advantage. So fwib played E5. Probably looking just to avoid, or rather to keep Sultan from playing that square himself. And it does help. Sultan here plays F4. So Sultan now again building this sort of a vertical threat going here. There is the possibility of this little white captive under here. Don't forget that's there. That Sultan can free that up at any time. And if we plays on F5, so he does now finally get a little bit of connection to this right edge and blocks off the use of that square for Sultan's vertical threat. All right, Sultan's playing F2. Oh, I had something interesting here pointed out by Archvenison in chat. fwib plays B5, so he is looking to make a horizontal threat across the top there. That's a pretty good location to do it. There's not a lot of Sultan's pieces up there, especially in this upper left section of the board. I expect Sultan might start putting some up there at this point, however. Sultan might also play E6. Yep, there it is. To basically work on this threat here. Capture D5 to the right, and then that's a threat with the throw of this wall and the top black piece off of it. It's not a threat yet, but Sultan has positioned himself. If fwib plays A5, as he did, he can use this capture of D5 to the right to both neutralize that threat. The threat here it being across here, this capture D4 up to complete a road. So I would expect, yep, there it is. And that is a threat also from Sultan now. So that is attack threat. It might force fwib. He could capture F5 to the left, or he could capture E3 to the right. Those are really his only defenses at the moment. I would expect e3 to the right probably would be met with just another flat on this square. f5 to the left could be a flat back on that square, or could be e6 down capture. Neither of those immediately renew the threat, but they put Sultan in a good position to do so. Oh, another option here. I don't know if it's... Yeah, it's f5 down. Now, this to me looks like it's just going to result in the top two on this e4 stack getting thrown to the right. And that's going to hurt to try to defend. There's some dangerous sequences in here. Yeah, I would. Yep, there. I would really expect that 2 from e4 to the right there. Now, fwib. Oh, that's very close to a Tinue. For those not familiar with the term, that would mean guaranteed win if played correctly. Basically, a forced win. He cannot capture e3 to the right, because that would just leave this square empty. But there's 2 threats kind of happening here. Through this direction, f3 to the left, but there's also... I'll leave that one on there for you. There's also up through here, because this wall with the top 2 black pieces can just be thrown off of that piece to create a road. If he captures upward with e3, Sultan just replies by bringing these pieces off the top of his white flat there to the left, and that is immediately another attack threat. And that would be game. That would be Tinue. So he cannot capture that way up. d4 to the right. Similar threat. It does take a few more moves. It's looking very dangerous for fwib right now, this position. And he has to capture something on this move, because this is currently, there is attack threat in 2 different ways, as I pointed out, on the board. This is one of those situations in TAC where you get this really really tight in a very small area, that there's a lot of things happening tactically. Oh, and thank you to Archvenison, pointed out that the capstone here is actually pinned because of the number of captives underneath this wall. Oh, I'm assuming that is a concession from fwib. He just went on b4. So that is not in no way stopping Sultan's threat. So Sultan is free to just throw that off, and he wins the game. So congratulations to Sultan. Took that first game, quite a good fight there. It was a very, very equal position at the very beginning, but he did have some very clever threats that allowed him to take a little bit of a flat lead and took control of that game. Very, very, very clever ending there, and it really ended up being his downfall for fwib, that he just didn't have the pieces over on that right edge of the board to maintain a defense. So let me just real quick see if the players want to break. And then we will get ready for game 2 of the match. I'm going to go ahead and have to count up some of these pieces. Okay, yep, we're going to have just about a 5-minute break. And then we'll be back for match, or for not the match, game 2. We'll be back for game 2 here between SultanPepper and fwib, and the winner of this match will move on into the winner bracket final. And let me pull up the bracket here for you. going into the winner bracket final against No Hat Coder, that will be an intense game, no doubt. But we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks, everyone. All right, folks, we are back. Looks like the players have their next game set up. So let me just go ahead and check they're ready, and we'll get the game beginning. All right, players have been given the go-ahead. And we have, so Fwib is taking white this game, and Sultan will be taking black. We have adjacent corners. They're just rotated so that we have them top and bottom this time. Oh, and so Fwib goes straight for the middle, but rather than doing the kind of like split that we've been seeing in a lot of games where, pardon me, players would stay kind of on their own half and just take these two middle squares each, Sultan immediately cuts into Fwib's position with b2. And Fwib is actually taking some time to think about that more. All right, so Fwib then, continues in the center, and Sultan is kind of cutting behind him. It looks like this is like maybe an effort to isolate his central stones from the one initial stone on A1. And Fwib's kind of going to just, I think, take advantage of this sort of positionally, I guess I would say. And he's bringing his capstone in. Already move 4, just capstone right there. Sultan is building A5. This looks a lot like just Sultan going for a straight up edge crawl. I'm not sure if this is going to work out for him. I know a lot of people say an edge crawl can be very strong on a 5x5 board. I don't know that it's been proven to be particularly strong on a board this size, though. Okay, it is looking moderately threatening, though. But Sultan bringing his capstone onto A4. If this threat does not pan out, he is now committed a lot to this edge crawl. I would not be at all surprised to see a wall coming in here from Fwib. If he can hold off this threat, he should have a decent lead with his central development. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's several more than what Sultan has out there. Fwib taking a lot of time here for moves, waiting or deciding on move 6 for this game. And it's understandable. This is a very non-standard opening. Wow. Okay, that is a really interesting response. He brings his cap over onto his own piece. And that seems a little odd in a way, but it gives him a very powerful counter in that he can throw, oh, pardon me, here, spinning the board around all over the place. He can throw that down. He can cover both of these black pieces, turning them basically white, which then suddenly gives him a connection halfway across the board, and at the same time neutralizes that threat. So that is, again, while it's similarly committing his resources kind of over on this left half of the board, it looks like a very strong refutation of this attempt at an edge crawl. And Sultan's continuing, plays on A3, so he is basically tack right there. He is making the threat. At this point, you might just see B1 here from Fwib. That'll hold it off for one move. Yeah, and at this point, Sultan probably go with C1. threaten the capture onto there. And at that point, I think we will see the throw of the capstone. Once that happens... Oh, no, he goes with C2 instead. That, actually, now looking at that, that's probably a better positioning, just because he has exposure to this central area a little bit more, or at least this C3 stone. And once this threat, I mean, assuming that cap throw happens, he is going to be wanting to have a way to try to stop this horizontal road, because he will be largely without it. Oh, and rather than go for the two-piece throw, fwib playing it kind of conservatively, just moving down onto the one piece. So Sultan can just take A2 here, making the threat again. And then that's up to fwib to decide how he wants to respond. He can do so bringing the cap over onto A3, but that commits his own cap to the edge. Oh, and so Sultan, it seems like he doesn't want to keep committing to that one edge of the board. Probably wisely, in my opinion. Now, I think this is a great opportunity for fwib to play E3. Oh, he takes the A2 square for himself. That's pretty good too. I actually like that pretty well. So now Sultan. What is Sultan gonna do? He could get a sequence going if he places on C1 or D1, and then also gets E2, making a capture of either B2 left or A3 down kind of gets him a sort of almost double threat. It's not strong. There's a lot of pieces that can mess that up for him. Sultan taking his sweet time for sure. Usually at this point in the game, we see both players up somewhere above 12 minutes on time or so. Sultan is already below 9, and fwib's just below 10. So a lot of thinking in this early game. It's took a non-standard direction and forced both players to really think about what their moves were going to do. Okay, he goes with E2. Looking like he might want to race. We might want to be the first to make this horizontal threat. Fwib would be okay to play E3 here. He's going to want to be keeping an eye on how this threat develops. He could also play F2 if he's a little more concerned. No, I think E3 there. He does play it. He's got to make that effort to build his own road. And there's so F2 from Sultan, making the threat of capturing downward. So really here, I think fwib could be well served to bring this whole stack from B3 down. It will kind of disrupt his connection, but it will leave him the move next on his next move to be able to throw, as we were thinking he would do earlier. He could throw over these two squares, and that would really just dry up a lot of the defense that Sultan has been trying to build up. Like this is a threat, so it is currently offense. Okay, no, he doesn't move the capstone. He captures B1 upward. While it's immediately attack threat, it is one that's fairly easy to stop. F3, just a flat stone on F3 is a pretty easy stop there. I'll expect fwib to, just kind of build in this direction as needed. So he could lay a couple of flats there, because he does have a bottom connection also, so he could kind of force laying flats until he gets all the way up to the top and has sort of a double direction. So Sultan is a little more worried about this. He's thinking about that sequence of captures that could happen, puts a wall down on F3. So that's going to make a lot harder to stop, especially looking at how far away that capstone is for fwib. So at this point, fwib, he's going to go for it. He's the E4. Another wall from Sultan. And he goes the E5 and a capture with the wall over. And this is what I was just going to start thinking about. Is like, well, if there's walls over here, build away from them. And fwib's got this entire C file that was just had nothing obstructing it. And so now, obviously, Sultan is rectifying that with C5. But it still wouldn't hurt here for fwib to be building up in this area. This capstone has done basically nothing the entire game. It was just a super flat. Kind of looking back to where I was talking about using this stack with a capstone to take out that threat earlier, I feel like that, looking at where the game has gone, that would have been helpful even to this point, that getting that capstone all the way over to D2 right now would have made these walls a fair bit less threatening than what they are. Sultan plays on B5, so he is getting a little bit of a connection built out there, and also just preventing fwib from taking anything over there. Fwib has options right now. C6 could be interesting. Yeah, C6. All right, so that is a threat. Fwib's got a threat going up through here. He has the capture ready. Sultan, it would be kind of cutesy and nice to want to do the throw for this wall, but that leaves a piece here on D4. So this wall cannot make that leap. At this point, likely moves C2 up doesn't really work. It's immediately recaptured. C5 down or C5 up. Up, not very good because this square gets filled in. Capturing down. I think that the response from fwib would still be to fill that square in, and then this capstone, the way this capstone is on top of another piece, could come into play. There is also a capture of C2 to the left, would delay by a move. Similarly with A3 down. Okay, so we do see the C5 downward. Here, fwib, I think, would do well to fill in. He could place another piece there. He could place on D4, because that would be an immediate threat again. But then I think that does give the opportunity for this wall to move over. All right, so he does go for that. So this is an immediate threat right now coming through here. Ooh, pardon me. So there, yeah, the wall does move over. And that's a bit rough. He can fill on e4, but that's going to bring this wall over, and that's happening just before I'm able to even say it. So those positionings I'm not so certain about because it gave Sultan the opportunity to move those walls into better positions. Filling in this c5 square still seems like a good idea. Better than letting Sultan take it, at least. And now with the fairly decent control fwib has had throughout the game, he is finally materializing that into a piece lead out on the board. So it looks like there's 15. So he's got 15 flats somewhere out on the board. Some of them are captives, obviously. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So versus only 13. So 15 pieces on the board for fwib, 13 for Sultan. But for Sultan, 2 of those 13 are walls also. A pretty interesting move. So it's Sultan's turn. Wouldn't be terrible to fill something in on b4. He needs to do something up there. One interesting thing that I was looking at though. Oh, he brings the capstone over. That's a painful move, but it is also a good move. It prevents anything getting built above this capstone. The interesting thing I was looking at for fwib here is if he took this stack with the capstone and threw it 2 squares to the right, threatening both of these walls. Brings the capstone really into the action, into the center of the board. It doesn't immediately make a threat, but it leaves fwib with a threat of freeing captives, and also with 2 of his own pieces in the stack here on c3. So he could then spread that, say, upward. Now this cap coming in does make that more difficult. So that probably, as painful it is to see, basically moving that cap just 1 square over, it may have been the correct move here. So fwib's taking a good amount of time to think here. For anyone that might be curious, the time controls for these games are that each player receives 10 minutes, plus each move they make, they then receive an additional 20 seconds. So this means that by move 15, each player has received an extra 5 minutes. So each player has used around 8 to 9 minutes of thinking time already. All right, fwib decides on the horizontal build with f4. Now let's see, he's got something of a connection. Nothing real threatening yet, but I was wondering about that because of this potential for the cap throw. it's a few moves out to build it. But it does let him have this threat. And another wall from Sultan, B1 wall. All right, so we've got enough walls out now, and they're all from Sultan, that building a road is becoming increasingly difficult. Continuing the theme of both players thinking quite a long time. I know we did have one of the earlier games get down. I can't recall who it was that was playing purely best just left on the 20-second increment. But in this later stage of the tournament, I think this is the most time I've seen used yet. Enkaran says C1. It seems fairly good. I'm not really sure. Not sure how much it helps. I am expecting Sultan to bring this wall up on his next move. Both blocks off this side of the road for Fwib and gives him the opportunity to free up that captive on B2 there. Okay, at last Fwib decides. I am kind of interested here. That was a long calculation that I'm presuming he must have made. But so B6. So he is now just one from making a threat across there. He could do something simple, just like B6 to the left to make that an actual threat, but it seems like this square would just get filled in. Maybe with another wall, I don't know. And there's, yeah, the move from Sultan, bringing that wall up onto B2. So now I'm wondering what thoughts Fwib has. Could place on A4. It's possible we'll see something from Sultan like A3 down. Then Fwib might be a little bit rough. A1 up is going to end up with a capture from this wall, but he could then bring his capstone down into the way. I don't know. It's not a particularly nice continuation there. Fwib's getting to the point of being a little bit low on time now. Under 4 minutes. Sultan's still up above 6. All right, C1. C1 from Fwib. All right, yeah, that was something something suggested. Just fairly good, fairly defensive. I mean, but it's a flat stone, and that's always going to help. So now whatever Sultan does, he can capture up onto this horizontal threat. And A4 from Sultan. So he's just filling that in. All right. So now, Sultan has gotten himself back to a very similar position that he was near the beginning of the game, with this edge crawl kind of build here, and then his second threat horizontally across the board. He's still not quite with a way to connect them. At this point, I mean, it kind of looks difficult to build a road for anyone. Both players seem fairly close. I would almost wonder, though, if Fwib should start considering aiming just for a flat win. Let me do a quick count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to ignore that. 10, 11, 12. 12 for Fwib. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for Sultan. So right now, it is 13 to 10 with this one added in on F3. Outside of just filling in the board and keeping ahead on flats, I'm not sure what F3 does a lot of. In some ways, you could think about it trying to pin this wall, but there's not a lot of reason to pin it that I can think of. Also, it's not currently pinned because there's no connection on this edge of the board. Sultan's turn to use some thinking time up here. He is tricky and close. To making a road across through here. And of course, you also need to watch out for that continuing across the board this way, and then continuing down the board over here. So some tricky little capture sequences could happen here. Though really, with his capstone in here, Fwib doesn't have too much to worry about. I would not be against him still aiming kind of for the flat win. F1 from Fwib. I think that's pretty good. And that could allow him to capture upward to make a threat. Threat coming all the way from C6 over here. Not a threat yet. So fwib with just over 2 minutes. Sultan just coming under 4 minutes at this point. And, well, fwib does seem to be in a fairly stable march towards filling the board. I am still wondering what does Sultan have in mind? Oh, F5. Could be just attempting to get some exposure onto these flats. Just so fwib doesn't kind of get a free run at it. Although, I mean, there's these walls that can be moved over and, well, no, actually, that one can, yeah. Sorry. So walls can be moved around a little bit, but I think that fwib would fill in with flats immediately, which would be tack threats because of the ability of this capstone to just hop over onto A3. So you got to keep that in mind. Okay, E6. Just laying down flats. We're down to just 4 squares left on the board. 4 empty squares. Sultan looking for what to do here. I'm hoping he's going to do something with this captive he has underneath B2. It's not a straightforward way that it can be used right now, though. All right, he's going for it. Took everything with him over to A2. He's got something up his sleeve, I feel like. He has to. Oh, okay. And that kind of prods fwib into responding by moving his capstone over to the edge. Capstone on the edge yet again. So here, B2. Wait, Archvenison saying that's a threat. There we go. So B2. Oh, I see the threat. Wow. Okay. That's a tricky one there. And yes, I missed it as well. Sultan missed it though. Chat, thank you for pointing that out. This cap can be thrown upward here, and that will complete this road. That's a pretty tricky one, and especially given the timing, because it felt like that cap movement was a response to this wall movement over. Sultan is kind of coming close here, but I think fwib pulled this one out. So congratulations to fwib. And several, well, mostly Queso in chat here, I believe, was keeping track of the tie breaks that I think fwib might take this match. Do a quick count on this. So fwib with white 1, so that's 12. Let me get my little sheet up here. So Sultan had 12 pieces left. We're gonna do these. We'll just do these counts live. What everybody say? How about that? So Fwib got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then, so 15 for him. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Only 10. So that's another reason why that final cap throw was so good. It really cut down on the flats that Sultan had there. So that makes a +5. Also, so I believe that's 30 tiebreak points under the Ford tiebreak system. I will double check that. But I think regardless of how we're adding it, it does look like Fwib will end up taking the match. So let me go ahead and do a quick update on the bracket. Okay. Let's go back over here to some of these results real quick. So game 1 went to Sultan, but game 2 went to Fwib with a higher tiebreak. All right, so that means, quick update. So here is telling me that the tiebreak is 32. Oh, I did count the reserves incorrectly. That's why there are 12 left. All right, yes. Okay, so yes, so that's a tiebreak score of 32 for Fwib. So that's a pretty good result on that ending there. All right, let me pull up the bracket, and then we will get a look at what our upcoming matches will be. This is gonna be some great, interesting games here. All right, bracket is updated. So now we can see this game. So Fwib takes the win over SultanPepper. That pushes Sultan down into the losing bracket. So the next match he plays will be against Jooms. We also have Rabbit Boy 84 versus Arch Venison down there. And the final of the winners bracket will be No Hat Coder versus Fwibib. Wow. That's going to be an interesting set of matches there. And even the elimination in the losers bracket is going to be pretty hotly contested at this point. All these players are playing very well these days. But with that, I just want to say thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you're going to keep up with the last few matches. We are more than halfway through the finals tournament now. And before I go, I want to make sure I say thank you to Wormwood Gaming for being our sponsor, providing the beautiful first prize board, the Purple Heart tack box set. Let me pull up, put that rotation of the prizes going on there. So we have the Purple Heart tack box set from Wormwood, and we also have some beautiful leather sets from Andrew Cookson. So thank you very much to both of those sponsors for supporting us and helping us promote tack. And with that, we will be getting the next matches scheduled as soon as possible, so I hope you'll stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We'll have updates on there. Twitter is the best place to get the notifications about when we go live for streaming. And of course, check us out on the web at ustac.org. Thanks very much, and I will see you guys all for the next match.